Lucas here from New Zealand Tech Expo. We are with the one and only Dom Pim. How are you, Dom?
Very good. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Thanks for joining. So, a lot of people are gonna connect and resonate with some of your achievements, some of the businesses you've run. I just wanted to give you a chance to introduce yourself as a person and who you are.
Sure. Well, that's good. I think that many people know me as the founder of a bank, but obviously I'm more than that. I'm a dad. I've got a couple of kids. I've been married 27 years. so, I live in Australia and I have traveled and lived all around the world, but I keep coming back to Australia because it's so great. I do spend quite a bit of time in New Zealand and have had a couple of companies in New Zealand that have expanded out from Australia to New Zealand. So I spend a bit of time there. And nowadays, I guess I would say I'm kind of semi-retired. I like to take the kids to school and pick them up from school, and I travel a little bit and try to enjoy life and I guess not work too hard, even though I do work reasonably hard. Because I think there's like 27 hours in a day and 8 days in a week, right?
Pretty much, exactly. Sounds like any other founder that I get to talk to. Hey, and so when you say you're semi-retired, that's really an understatement because I've seen you doing the rounds, in the middle of a number of conversations, visiting and attending a number of events up and down the country, and so super hyperactive still in the scene. Um, you build businesses, you've sold businesses, you invest in businesses as well. What's what's the motivation
Yeah.
to keep going at it?
Yeah, I mean, maybe a bit of context is like during COVID, I sold three companies. So that two of them were in Australia, and one of them was in the UK. And it sort of gave me a pool of money, a pool of capital that I was able to be more independent and make investments and sort of be semi-retired. But the thing that gets me out of bed in the morning is actually helping the Australia, New Zealand, and Pacific Islands venture and startup communities to be successful. We want to grow them. I have a view that Australians and New Zealanders in particular are very curious, very confident, deliver a lot of disruption and innovation. And that sort of awesomeness is something that we want to accelerate and take to the rest of the world. So my mission is to pay it forward and to help the next generation to accelerate, to elevate, and to take great, I guess, New Zealand innovations and Australian innovations to the rest of the world and just really show them how awesome we are, particularly in technology. That's an area that I'm very fascinated with.
Totally, totally. When you say innovation for Australia, New Zealand, and the Pacific Islands, are you seeing are you seeing real innovation coming through into your office, into conversations, or are we merely catching up to the rest of the world?
Oh no, we're miles ahead of the rest of the world in so many ways. There's a lot of amazing inventions, creations, disruptions that happen locally here in the region. I'm au fait more with the Australian ones, but when I was in New Zealand recently, I went out to Future House and I met with a whole bunch of innovators and disruptors and founders and looking at all the different businesses and things that are being invented. And there's a name for it in New Zealand, like number eight wire, right? So
Totally.
it actually encompasses this ingenuity that is, I think, reasonably, if not unique, it's reasonably powerful in this particular region. In Australia, we probably don't have a name like that, like number eight wire. We normally say things like a bit of WD-40 and a bit of gaffer tape. But it's the same
Yeah.
sort of thing. You can basically use the fence wire to fix anything or create anything, pull apart a computer, pull apart a device, put it back together, pull apart a motorbike or a tractor. This sort of level of curiosity, I think, is quite innate in our lifestyle and our culture. And then we bring that to startups and we bring that to businesses, and that's pretty unique. Add to that the confidence that we have as people that like to surf and like to sail and like to hang out in the sun, and you get this really relaxed lifestyle, but a really hardcore, dedicated, focused startup founders. Very rare to find that anywhere in the world, other than maybe Tel Aviv or San Francisco. Anywhere else you go, it's pretty rare. So I think it's an asset that we have, and a lot of the innovations that we create dominate. So I'll give you some examples. In Australia, everyone knows maybe we invented Wi-Fi. That's pretty cool, but also carbon fiber, um, and things like Google Maps was invented in Sydney, and the plastic polymer in paint. So anything in the world that's painted was invented in Melbourne in the 1950s. So
Wow.
there's these cool things that we do, and then some of them are well known and some of them aren't. But what I'm seeing is now quantum and AI and fintech and climate tech and all these amazing businesses that are literally leading the world. But because the market is so small in New Zealand and Australia and the Pacific Islands, we sort of think that we don't matter. But actually we do matter. And we need to take those innovations to the world and scale them on a global basis.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Um, you've got two different vessels for investing. One's the family office, the other one's triple bubble. What's the difference between these two, and like what do you focus on each one?
Yeah. So Euphemia is the Greek origin of my surname, Pim. So that's the family office, and Euphemia has about 120 investments right across the world, but mostly in Australia and New Zealand. And we have 24 funds that we've invested in, 32 vintages. We've got a couple of funds in New Zealand, and the rest are in Australia, the US, and the UK. I think there might be one in Canada too. And then through those funds, we're invested in thousands of companies. So the family office is reasonably active. We've deployed close to 100 million of my own money into the startup community to try and help accelerate it. But more importantly, we lead rounds and we do the due diligence and we meet the founders and we sit on boards and we get involved in the business with strategy and helping with partnerships and growth and international expansion and all that sort of stuff. So we actually bring a lot more capital. So when I put in $1 million or $500,000, I'll get 2 or 3 big VCs to put in 50 million or 100 million. So, what we see ourselves doing is elevating the ecosystem by leading, by doing the due diligence, by getting involved and helping with those sort of things. So the family office has been around sort of for a long time, like decades, but in the last 3 years, we got the money from the exits and then we sort of capitalized that and started investing that back into the community. So the family office basically has spent all my money. And now we're looking at ways to scale. So we started a fund, and the fund is bringing other people's money in as well. And so at the moment, the fund is focused on fintech, and it's called Triple Bubble because there were 3 founders. It operates in 3 regions: Australia, New Zealand, Pacific Islands, and we're focusing on 3 different asset classes, which is a primary capital for a startup, like your normal sort of investment in equity, and then secondary, so that founders and early investors can capitalize their asset. So it's very difficult sometimes as a founder, and you just need, you're asset rich and cash poor, and you just need some cash. So we do secondaries, and then we also do public markets investment. So those 3 things, and each of the 3 categories, are the reason why we call it Triple Bubble. It's actually very
Nice.
popular in the US and Europe to have funds of that nature, but in this region, extremely rare. We're the first one in Australia.
Yeah. We're starting to, I guess, come to that moment where we depart from general VCs into more specialized VCs. For fintech or for deep tech, like the one you made at the outset. What's that extra that you think you coming from or having operated in the fintech sector brings to the table for founders that are looking for investment as opposed to going to any other generic fund? They might need to go to everyone, but specifically in engaging with you guys.
Well, most of the big funds are generalist funds, so you typically do want to engage with them because as your business grows, you need more capital, and they have all the capital. But I think a generalist fund and like more strategic capital is able to help your business in many different ways. So, for example, I was FinTech Leader of the Year in 2022 in Australia 3 times. So I call that peak Dom, because that was like after 25 years of doing fintechs, I won all these awards. But it was because the fintechs that I created have had a massive impact. We had the world's first grain exchange, which was an agricultural fintech. We had a digital bank, which is the number 1, the fastest growing bank in Australia. And then we had a payments company, PIN Payments, that was all around the world, including in New Zealand, the UK, Singapore, the US. And so, I got a reputation for being really good at fintech. I'm now on the board at FinTech Australia, which is the industry body. And this year, I actually won Australian Investor of the Year. So I sort of transitioned from being, 3 years ago, I was getting a bit old hat. I needed to update my LinkedIn. So going from being FinTech Leader of the Year to being Investor of the Year. And we're an extremely active investor. And I do bias towards fintechs because that's something I know. So, for example, the big venture capitalists, the generalists, they will, Airtree, Square Peg, Blackbird, and so on. that they will ask me to do the due diligence on fintech deals, or they will ask if I want to co-invest with them on fintech deals, or vice versa. We'll be doing due diligence on, for example, some of the digital banks in New Zealand, and then we'll take that due diligence to the big investors. We'll put in a nominal check and get them to put in a bigger check, and that way we can fill out the round, but we can still do the due diligence and bring the sort of more strategic lens and a sort of more personal lens that I can offer, as opposed to a generalist venture capitalist, because they can't be expected to know everything about everything. Like if you're building rockets and you're doing, desalination, and then you're doing solar panels, and then you're doing, some sort of consumer goods, and then you've got a SaaS, and then you're investing in robots, and then you've got AI, and then you've got a fintech. Well, you just can't expect them to be an expert in everything. So I actually think these sort of vertical funds that have a deep focus and deep experience with, operators, founders, people that have done that before, can bring a lot of value to a startup.
Yeah, 100%. In terms of the people that connect with you and want your advice or your money, which I imagine will be, quite a few. In my research for this chat with you, I came across a statement that you made, which is when you first hit up, I think Bendigo, you were told by the general manager at that time that trust takes about 10 years to build. What's your approach to building trust with people who might not have the 10 years, or they're building fast and scaling? How do you enable trust with founders that are going for gold?
I think sometimes it ties in with the previous discussion around vertical specialist, capital that is strategic, because there's, for example, a bank director who lives in Auckland but has been involved as an executive at Australian banks. And so if you were a fintech and you wanted to get a relationship with a bank, you want someone like that on your side, right? Because they know the CEO, they know the CTO, they might know the directors. And so I think that the best way to accelerate trust is to lead by example, to not just say you're going to do something, but to actually do it so people can see it happening. And then they get a bit of FOMO, they're like, oh, wow, that's really awesome. What's happening over there? And so, TSB and Kiwi Bank and all the big four banks, suddenly they start like perking up and saying, well, what are these people doing? And I'd like to get some of that action, rather than you pursuing them. So if you do a really good job and you start getting market penetration, you start getting growth in whatever discipline you're in, whether AI or SaaS or fintech or whatever it is. But once you start getting momentum and the customers are voting with their feet, then the big enterprises take notice. And whether they're mining companies or agricultural companies or banks or the stock exchange or whatever, they take notice of the startups that are growing the fastest and getting the best penetration. And I would also say the ones that are loved the most. So one of the things about, that's great about disruptors is the ability for customers to actually love what you do, love the experience, and be passionate and spread it through word of mouth. And so the rest of the sort of commercial industry and enterprises, they hear that and they see that, and then they want to come and talk to you. That's the best way to build trust, because you're demonstrating that you can do it rather than telling someone in a keynote presentation that you can do it.
Yeah, totally. There's some other verticals or industries that might have a slightly easier journey towards gaining trust from consumers, where fintech is quite a delicate one, because you're playing with people's life savings, with people's money. What have you seen coming up as a trend in the last year or two, maybe in Australia, in the way that companies are bridging and getting faster to gain the trust of consumers?
Yeah. Well, I always say that the heartbeat of any organization, and particularly a startup, is your delivery cadence, the ability for you to ship software to customers. And nowadays, software is eating the world, as they say. So it doesn't really matter what industry you operate in. There's going to be software involved. So, you have to ask yourself the question, do you want to outsource that, or do you want to own that IP? Do you want to develop that in-house and build a culture around delivering high quality software quickly? And if you can move faster than the incumbents, or if you're building a new industry, you can move faster than your competitors. If you can do that, that becomes the heartbeat of the organization. That's the thing that keeps you alive, but also helps you thrive. So my view is get really good at engineering excellence, get really good at automated testing, get really good at automated deployments, get really good at continuous integration. They're the things that will separate your startup from other startups in your sector.
Yeah, yeah. What looking back into your timeline, some of the businesses. Um, Again, going back to the research for this chat, when you started up with Tomo, you were not really necessarily gunning for building a bank, but you wanted to create a fantastic product that people would use and love. I guess I want to tell some of the people listening to us will be first-time founders freaking out, sometimes not being able to sleep and sometimes being kind of tackled by fear. What's your memory of those early days for you in terms of fear, sleep, being able to make decisions, feeling that the burden was too much potentially?
Yeah, 100% fear, 0% sleep. That's pretty much it. I think the very early days, Tomo and I had, we were in business together for 15 years. We sort of started 3 companies together, or maybe more. But there were 3 significant companies that we either sold or built to scale. And I think that in the early days, it was really just me and Tomo sitting around his kitchen table saying, what impact do we want to leave? What legacy? What do we want to achieve? And it came down to 3 very simple things. We wanted to work with great people. We wanted to build a great product, and we wanted to operate in a great environment. And the environment encompasses culture, but also the physical place. There's a lot of remote work when you're working in technology, but also having a great place where people want to be. You're going to spend more time with your colleagues and at the office than you are with your family, especially when you're in a new startup and you're not getting much sleep, because you're only going home really to sleep, right? Sometimes to eat. So we would provide meals for the staff. We would have entertainment in the office. We had a masseuse. We would do gym exercises, boxercising, Pilates, Tai Chi, all sorts of different things were happening in the office. Obviously, Mario Kart, can't go past that. But, those sort of things would enhance people's office life. And we had no specific idea necessarily about what it was we were going to build. We just wanted to build something awesome with awesome people in an awesome environment. And if you can just have that goal, then we stumbled across banking. And we applied our expertise to solving the problem of banking. And it's a funny sort of problem to solve because it's already solved. Like everyone has a bank account. You have to have not everyone, but most people have a bank account, and you have to have a bank account in order to survive. So
Yeah.
so it's a solved problem. It then became, can we make a better bank account? Can we make a bank that you can engage with, that you want to engage with, that you literally fall in love with, and that you tell your friends about? And that doesn't matter whether it's a bank or a mining company or an agriculture company or a SaaS or an AI or whatever it might be. You could be building rockets, but you want the customer ultimately to fall in love with what you're doing and have the same passion. So I actually believe that the passion that we had manifests in the product, and the customer can feel that love, and then that pays it forward, and then they go and tell other people and they fall in love with your product. So I think actually building a great user experience in any industry is almost the secret sauce, because you want your team's passion and enthusiasm and curiosity and excitement to come through the screen so that people can feel it. And when that happens, you're onto something really magic. You've got TikTok or Instagram or Google or Twitter or X or whatever they call it now. But you've got one of these great products: Uber, Airbnb, Shopify, Spotify, Reddit. These brands are all so well known because everyone loves them, and they're the market leader. And so that's what you want to manifest. Don't worry about what it is that you're actually building. Worry more about how you're building it, who you're building it for, how you're communicating that passion. And then that passion literally seeps through the screen, and your customers end up becoming your biggest sort of sales channel.
I think you have answered my next question, but I'll throw it out in case you want to add anything else, which is, back to the early days. How do you attract the right people to come and work and join you when you might not be, fully funded to go and have the luxuries to build, with time? You're under the pump, you're under the pressure to build something great and hopefully quickly, how do you attract the right people?
Yeah. So before I was saying, Australians and New Zealanders are very curious, very disruptive. So curiosity is one asset, I think, that is innate in founders. And if you don't have it, you need to learn it. And it's possible to learn it, but it's really good when it's sort of part of your DNA. The second one is confidence. So curiosity, confidence, and tenacity. Now, to answer your question, right in the beginning, when you've got a lot of fear and a lot less sleep, what you need is to over-index on the confidence. Because like I remember when Tomo and I were just two blokes, we hadn't raised any money, we didn't have any employees, we didn't have an office, we had nothing, and yet we were pitching, ended up being to big companies like New Balance and obviously a bank like Bendigo Bank. And so, these pitches were really just two blokes with an idea and knowing that we could raise money and that we could get a team and that we would get an office. That's where you have to over-index on confidence. I don't think you should over-index on confidence so that you seem like a dickhead. I think you should over-index on confidence and match it with the curiosity. You've got to have an innovation. You've got to have a unique selling proposition. You've got to have something that you're passionate about solving and something that you want to disrupt. But if you can demonstrate that confidence, you need to over-index on that in those early days when you don't have people, you don't have a place, and you don't have any money. Then the other one is tenacity, resilience, determination, overcoming the odds, getting up from a failure. So I think if you put them in order, you say confidence has to be number one when you're just starting out. Secondly, you need to be curious about something that you need to be passionate about it, and you need to be able to demonstrate that to people. But probably, in some ways, most importantly, you need to be tenacious. You need to be able to get back up when you have a bad meeting, or you don't raise money, or you try to hire someone and they take a job somewhere else, or you're building a product and you deploy it to production and your servers go down, or those sort of things. You need to be able to get back up and go. And so I think they're, to me, the three things that most resonated. The thing that least resonated when you're really starting out is sleep. But can I just say this? Like, sleep should be the most important thing, because without good health and good sleeping, good eating, good exercise, you won't be able to function at your sort of highest level of capacity. And as a founder, that's really what differentiates you from anyone else, is your ability to function at a very high level and deliver elite performance. If you can deliver elite performance in whatever the endeavor is that you're doing, you necessarily need to eat, sleep, and exercise. So, I sort of make jokes about not getting much sleep, which is true. But, at the same time, you do need to find a way to focus on that as the most important thing in your life. I remember actually when I began, right in the very early days, my first job, I saved up my salary, and I had to make a decision as to what I would buy. And I had to decide between a computer or a bed. And I chose the bed. And my theory was that if I had a really good bed and a really good mattress, I would get a good night's sleep and I'd be more productive at work. I'd be able to make more money. I could buy many computers, which is what I did. So I think that, even though we make jokes about not getting sleep as a founder, it is actually the most important thing that you need to do.
And it looks like it's worked for you. So
It's worked all right. Yeah. Actually, I'm one of those people that can fall asleep in an airport, on a concrete floor, in a chair, on a boat, anywhere. I could just instantly. I think it's because I'm always so tired. But I could just fall asleep anywhere. Whereas my wife, for example, is exactly the opposite. It takes her hours to get to sleep. And you don't want to wake her up in the middle of the night, because if you wake her up in the middle of the night, she can't get back to sleep.
Oh, no.
I'll just go back to sleep literally instantly. As soon as I close my eyes, I'm out.
Yeah. No,
That's a very
excellent.
good skill to have as a founder.
Totally. Very handy. Very handy. Hey, you're joining us at the New Zealand Tech Expo, September 2026. There's going to be a bunch of exhibition and networking. I just want to touch on networking and what it's meant for you. What sort of doors has it opened for you, rocking up to some of these events, going to that dinner when you were tired, some anecdotes or tales from, unexpected meetings and that led into some really cool things.
Yeah. I mean, I have so many stories about networking and meeting people at events. I go to all the events. I try to find the most important events that are relevant for me and then get along to them. Sometimes they're expensive to get to events. Sometimes they take a lot of time. You got to stay overnight, stay for a few days. And it's a hard slog, and sometimes you miss your lunch or whatever. But to me, it's the most important thing that you will do in your business is talk to people. You need to get out and meet new people, find potential partnerships, all sorts of crazy stories. So, as a founder, when you're starting out, you just go up to anybody and say g'day, right? But last week, for example, I had lunch with Julia Gillard, the ex-Prime Minister of Australia. I had dinner with Al Gore, the Vice President of the United States. and then I met with the Prince of Liechtenstein. So, like you might start out just shaking hands with other founders and going to the local events and everything. But after 10, 20 years, you can mix it with the big crew. And so I'm just saying that out loud, not to brag or anything like that, but to say that it's hard yards. It's actually staying awake for those lectures, going to those meetups, having the sort of fortitude to stand up and say hello to someone or sit next to them at a dinner or grab a drink with someone. And one example is we became the 5th bank in the world to integrate with Wise. Wise do the sort of foreign exchange and stuff.
Yeah.
And we became the 5th bank in the world, the first bank in all of Asia Pacific to integrate with them. And the way we met them was at an Apple conference in San Francisco, and we were at the Australian meetup, and we bumped into some people and said g'day, having a beer or whatever in San Francisco. And then we got introduced to this guy who was a developer at Wise. And he wasn't like just any developer. He was like the first developer or something like that, And he's at like WWDC and the Apple conference and launching the new iPhone or whatever they were doing. And so we had a chat with him. And then we had this meeting, and I call it the 15-minute meeting because he was based in Sydney. So originally from Estonia, but had moved to Australia and was based in Sydney. And we met him in San Francisco. And only because we went up, and it was our head developer, our head engineer who went up and said g'day to him. And then we got back to Sydney, and he said, do you want to come catch up with us in the Wise office in Sydney? We're like, no worries. So we rock up to the meeting, and he just shows us the API key and says, here's the API key. Just pop that into your laptop and away you go. And then we chatted about the weekend and kids and whatever. And in 15 minutes, we were literally done because he was a developer. And then we became the 5th bank in the world to integrate with Wise. Like, it's totally amazing. And so none of that would have happened. And now 7 years later, we're still the only bank in Australia integrated with Wise. And so it's literally changed the experience for our customers. But today, our customers are in like 200 countries across the world. We automatically switch the currency when you're traveling, and you can send money overseas, like at the same rates with the up user experience, but at the same rates you would if you use the Wise app. And so it's a really awesome integration that literally came out of a chance meeting. So I would say get to the events, make sure you meet the people, and then one day you'll meet with the Prime Minister as well.
Nice. Excellent. Hey, looking into 2026, if everything goes your way, what's 2026 looking like for you? What are some of the things that you've got in mind that you would love to achieve and get across?
Yeah, so for me at the moment, most of my time is focused on growing the new fund, the FinTech fund. And Triple Bubble has to, like in Australia, the regulations are really strict. So Triple Bubble has to go through a benchmark of its first raise in order to start deploying capital. So we should hopefully get there this year. And then once we're past first close, 2026 for me looks like running around the region, finding the hottest fintechs to invest in, and bringing the other 24 funds that we invest in to the party to co-invest. So I think what we'll be able to do is bring a whole new source of capital to the New Zealand, Pacific Island and Australian markets that didn't exist until Triple Bubble launched. So that's what I'll be doing. I'll probably be getting around a lot of the capital cities, a lot of the regions, meeting people, going to events, and just really spreading the word. Because when I say to people, our mission is to elevate the ecosystem, and we're starting with fintech because that's what I'm good at. People don't necessarily know what that means. What it means is I will understand your business better than anyone else, and I will sit down with you and help you and mentor you, and then provide the capital, and then bring in all the big venture capitalists as well, maybe from Australia, maybe from the UK, maybe from the US, or from China or Singapore or Hong Kong. So I think that 2026 for me is going to be running around a lot, going to a lot of events, meeting a lot of people, and trying to open up conversations. It's a double-sided marketplace. I need the investors to invest in the fund, and then I need the founders to have the startups that will be the next decacorn or the next unicorn. I say that almost tongue in cheek because most venture capitalists, that's what they do, is they look for the next decacorn or whatever. But actually what we want to do is find founders and be their first check, and then help them grow their business to 100 or 200 million, and then help them to capitalize that exit, either through mergers and acquisitions, through a public listing, through a secondary transaction if they want to keep going with their business after 5 years or 10 years. And so we think that we could do something quite unique, and that is bring to Australia, New Zealand and the Pacific Islands what we call an exit fund rather than a growth fund. is that we want people to be able to exit or partially exit their startup within 2 or 3 years instead of waiting that 10 years for the overnight success.
What an invitation for Kiwi fintechs to come and knock on your doors. How can the Kiwi tech ecosystem help us?
I reckon that's like a very good question, because when I came over recently to Wellington and Auckland, I spent a lot of time just asking people, well, what's happening? Where should I be? I didn't know what Future House was. Someone just told me I should go and check it out. And then I met with Outset, and they're like, oh, these guys are doing deep tech and it's totally awesome. I went to Rocket Labs and saw the rocket shards in the wall and all that sort of stuff. And I'm like, just that learning experience. So for me, as I'm traveling around and getting to New Zealand, and hopefully we can get out to the regions as well, then it's really just reaching out and saying to us, I went to the opening of Build Club in New Zealand. And I didn't even know it was happening. What happened was I did a presentation for MasterCard, sort of enterprising sort of presentation, whatever. MasterCard are totally awesome. They're running around doing all sorts of events. But, the people in the audience are all working for big companies that are partnered with MasterCard or whatever. And I was presenting alongside a venture capitalist from Airtree. And he said to me, oh, Dom, that was totally awesome. Do you want to come and be the keynote speaker for our conference? And I'm like, okay. Get my people to talk to your people, and just tell us when it is. And he goes, oh, it starts in 20 minutes. And I'm like, okay,
right,
let's do it. And what it was the launch of the New Zealand Build Club, and we got to go out to Future House and go to the top floor, and and we ran this event. It was a pizza and beer night. And there were heaps of university students and PhD students and heaps of founders. It was just incredible. It was a great vibe. And so where we would normally schedule that for 1 hour, we ended up spending 3 or 4 hours there until the building closed, because it was just such an awesome conversation. So I would say the thing that New Zealand founders can do most for me is introduce me to those events, introduce me to those people that are looking for capital, and then I can help not only provide strategy, guidance, mentorship, and capital, but also bring in the other bigger investors from the US or the UK or China or whatever.
Sounds fantastic. Hey, Dom, just to close on with this one, what's the best way for Kiwi founders to reach out to you?
So if you go to triplebubble.com, you can reach out. We've got a contact us and all that on the website. But look, I'm very accessible. I have my mobile number and my email address on the front page of the website for 10 years. So I'm on every platform. You can get me on Instagram or X or LinkedIn, or send me an email or whatever. Just reach out. And I think that taking that first step and reaching out and say, hey, Dom, can you help? That I genuinely want to help. And I didn't have to do this out on a yacht or I don't know, in the rainforest or something. But I'm choosing to do it because I'm very passionate about helping the next generation of founders. So if you're a founder, you should reach out however you can on any platform. And I always try to get back to everyone. I can't meet with everyone. We say no a lot of times. But those times we say yes, it's quite magical.
Yeah, and it shows. And having met you in person, I had the same powerful impression. Humble, really ready to help, getting out there. Still, when you could be doing other things. So I really appreciate your openness and you joining us for the New Zealand Tech Expo next September 2026. Hey, Dom, thanks for your time. I really wish you a fantastic end of the year, and we look forward to keeping in touch and seeing you next year here in New Zealand.
It'll be awesome. I can't wait for it. Look forward to seeing you there.
Cheers. Have a good one.
Thanks, mate.